The crack of the wooden gavel echoed sharply, slicing through the tension that hung in the courtroom nestled deep in the heart of Washington, D.C. Cold sunlight filtered in through the tall windows, spotlighting Adam Schiff as he entered. His face, unusually pale, betrayed his anxiety. His eyes flicked around the courtroom as though searching for an escape route, while his fingers twisted together, trying to steady the growing tremor in his hands. Sweat dotted his brow, more from pressure than the lights above. He was walking into a legal and political storm of his own making. The video he posted online, branding Jeanine Pirro as a liar and Trump's puppet, had lit the fuse. Now he stood on trial for defamation and was facing calls for his expulsion from the Senate. Each step felt like one closer to collapse. Opposite him sat Jeanine Pirro, composed and unmoved. With decades of courtroom experience as a judge and prosecutor, she carried a fierce, quiet power. Her eyes never wavered from Schiff, not with hostility, but with the cold assurance of someone who had won many fights before. She wasn't just defending her name. She was poised to dismantle a long-time political opponent. What had begun with a short, viral video had grown into a seismic confrontation where truth, reputation, and power were at stake. As Schiff approached the witness stand, the room fell into a heavy silence. Every breath, every scratch of pen against paper was amplified. He fumbled with his tie, trying to project calm, but the tremor in his fingers gave him away. Judge Margaret Reynolds looked down at him from the bench, her gaze direct and unblinking. "Senator Schiff," she said, her voice a honed blade of authority. "You may now explain your actions surrounding the video in question." Schiff inhaled deeply, as if air had become scarce, and began. His tone aimed for strength, but uncertainty seeped through. "Your Honor, I posted the video to warn the public. Jeanine Pirro, as acting federal prosecutor, presents a serious risk. I believed it was my duty to speak up." His eyes flicked to Pirro, who sat with arms folded and lips set in a tight line. Her gaze remained neutral, but piercing. Schiff pushed forward, trying to muster conviction. "She has made baseless claims on Fox News, particularly about the 2020 election. She was linked to the Dominion case, which cost Fox hundreds of millions. How can someone like that be trusted with justice?" He placed weight on the word trusted, hoping it would resonate with those watching, but glances exchanged in the gallery told a different story. The public wasn't buying it. Pirro's attorney, a tall, commanding man with a voice that carried like thunder, stood with a file in hand. "Senator, you accused Ms. Pirro of being a liar and a danger to democracy. Do you have proof? Anything beyond opinion and selective media clips?" The words hit Schiff like a blow to the ribs. He hesitated, reaching for memories of past broadcasts, but all he had were sensational segments, not hard evidence. She called Trump investigators venomous snakes. "That's not impartial conduct," he offered, trying to sound firm. The lawyer raised an eyebrow. "So your case rests on televised rhetoric, not verified misconduct?" Schiff opened his mouth but closed it again, his argument unraveling. Across from him, Pirro's stare cut deeper than words. A memory surfaced, uninvited. One from his office years earlier, when a young aide had warned, "Be careful, Adam. Spin has a cost." He had brushed it off then, dismissing caution as weakness. But here, under oath, he felt the sting of those ignored words. Judge Reynolds struck the gavel, snapping him out of his daze. "Answer the question, Senator." Schiff straightened. "I acted under my First Amendment rights. It was a matter of public concern." The lawyer wasn't done. "Free speech isn't a shield for defamation, Senator. Are you aware your video led to threats against Ms. Pirro?" On cue, the video played across the courtroom screen. Schiff's voice filled the space. "Jeanine Pirro is a liar, a puppet of Trump." Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Schiff looked down. The floor felt like it might give way beneath him. Pirro finally moved, raising her head, eyes drilling, into Schiff with silent intensity. The lawyer pivoted, his tone turning blade sharp. You led the Ukraine inquiry. You were accused of misrepresenting Trump's call with Zelensky. Who's the real liar here, Senator? The accusation pierced like a spear. Schiff shot up from his seat. That's a false charge. I acted in defense of this nation, he shouted. Judge Reynolds banged the gavel louder. Control yourself, Senator, or I'll remove you from this courtroom. Schiff sat, visibly shaken. The room, filled with reporters and political observers, had turned against him. What was meant as a tactical strike, his viral video, had become a noose. Pirro appeared almost serene, as if she had long seen this outcome. Pirro rose to speak, heels clicking against the hardwood as she moved to the stand. Her figure glowed in the overhead lights, confidence radiating from her. The room fell utterly silent. She placed one hand lightly on the stand, her voice steady as a judge's gavel. Your Honor, I'm here not just to defend myself, but to hold Senator Schiff accountable. She glanced at Schiff. He called me a liar, a puppet. But what? Has he offered in evidence? Nothing. The audience hung on her every word as she laid out her credentials. Over 30 years in law enforcement, pioneering work on domestic violence, courtroom victories that earned her national acclaim. These weren't claims, she insisted. They were documented. At a nod from her, her attorney presented thick files, awards, court transcripts, departmental commendations. Judge Reynolds accepted them, skimming a few pages. Schiff looked away, unable to meet her eyes. Pirro turned back to him, her tone sharper now. Senator Schiff says I misled the public, but I was never named in the Dominion lawsuit. Fox News settled that case. I wasn't even involved legally. So what gives him the right to brand me unfit? Her eyes pinned him. This was never about protecting the public. It was a political hit job, and it has consequences. Schiff sat motionless, eyes clouded, caught in a mental replay of campaign war rooms and media strategy sessions. He had built a brand on hitting Trump, and now that foundation was caving beneath him. The courtroom buzzed with restrained energy. Pirro's words struck not just at Schiff's arguments, but at his legacy. This wasn't just a defamation case. It had become a public reckoning. Her voice dropped to a solemn register. The justice system must be defended, not manipulated for personal gain. That's what I've done my entire career, and that's what Senator Schiff failed to do. She stepped back, leaving behind a silence heavy with consequence. The judge called for a brief recess, but everyone knew this wasn't over. As the judge called the court back into session, the doors creaked open again, and tension returned with the crowd. Jeanine Pirro sat back at the plaintiff's table, her hands folded calmly, while Schiff looked increasingly hollowed. The energy in the courtroom had shifted. He could feel it, not just in the murmurs of the audience or the scribbles of pens, but in the posture of his own lawyer, Ellen Carter, who seemed less confident now, more cautious. Then Pirro's attorney, Richard Conway, stood and turned the trial's direction like a captain adjusting a ship into the wind. Your Honor, he said, raising a gleaming tablet. We now call our next witness, Daniel Harper, former senior, aide to Senator Schiff. The name hit like a thunderclap. Schiff stiffened. The air seemed to vanish from the room. Harper, the same aide who had left after a series of arguments about the senator's aggressive media tactics against Trump. The door opened and Harper entered. He looked composed, his salt and pepper hair neatly parted, his expression unreadable. In a plain gray suit, he stepped forward and took the oath, his voice steady, even formal. Schiff's stomach churned. He remembered the last time they spoke. Harper had warned him. There's a line, Senator. Don't cross it. But Schiff hadn't listened. And now that line had returned, standing in a witness box. Harper responded to Conway's question calmly. Yes, I worked in Senator Schiff's office from 2017 until 2022. During that time, Conway asked, did you ever hear the senator Suggest using exaggerated or false claims to attack political opponents? Harper looked at Schiff. No bitterness, no revenge, just certainty. Yes, he said. In a closed-door meeting in 2019, the senator admitted that the summary of President Trump's Ukraine call might not align precisely with the original transcript. He said it would be effective politically. The courtroom stirred. Judge Reynolds lifted her gavel, her eyes scanning the room to restore order. Schiff wanted to speak, to object, to shout, but the weight of Harper's words had nailed him to his chair. Did he give reasons for doing that? Conway asked. Harper nodded. He said, "We have to craft a story that resonates." Gasps spread through the courtroom. Harper continued, now more forcefully. When he made the video about Ms. Pirro, I wasn't surprised. It was the same strategy, use media to crush opposition. Truth wasn't a priority. Conway held up the tablet. Your Honor, this is an email from Senator Schiff to Mr. Harper from 2020. On the screen, a single line. If the truth won't hit hard enough, we sharpen it. The courtroom buzzed again. Carter rose, trying to steady the narrative. Objection. That email doesn't prove intent. It's vague, easily misinterpreted. Conway countered smoothly. It shows a consistent approach. This isn't about one video. It's about a pattern. The judge reviewed the email, her lips pressed into a thin line. Schiff remained silent, his mouth dry, eyes unfocused. He was unraveling, not from one attack, but from years of aggressive politics crashing back like a tidal wave. Pirro observed quietly, her gaze locked on Schiff. Her face didn't gloat, but her eyes gleamed, aware this was a turning point. The court allowed Schiff to respond. He stood, his voice fragile. I never acted out of malice. I believed Ms. Pirro's statements were harmful. I had to speak up. But his defense sounded worn, like a speech repeated too many times. The judge remained expressionless. Conway rose again. Senator, free speech allows criticism, not character assassination. You called her a liar without evidence. That's not political commentary. It's defamation. Schiff sat slowly, his body heavy with the weight of what was happening. Pirro's earlier warning echoed in his mind. This isn't politics. This is accountability. The walls of the courtroom seemed to close in, and then Conway introduced a final bombshell. We'd like to submit new evidence, Your Honor. Another document, this time from Michael Torres, a former journalist, who had worked with Schiff during the Russia investigation. A printed memo appeared on the projector. The headline read, Strategic Messaging Plan, Undermine Trump Narrative. Gasps again. The memo contained notes attributed to Schiff, urging staff to exploit vulnerabilities even if speculative. Conway explained Torres had provided the memo voluntarily, disturbed by what he called ethical erosion. Schiff's lawyer objected, but the judge allowed it. This isn't proof of direct wrongdoing, Carter insisted. Only that Mr. Schiff considered political messaging strategies. But Conway, composed and methodical, delivered the final blow. When public trust is manipulated for political games, democracy suffers. Ms. Pirro wasn't just defamed, she was endangered by rhetoric weaponized for gain. Then it was Pirro's turn again. She stood, not to testify, but to conclude. Her voice was soft but firm. For too long, people like Senator Schiff have twisted the truth for political ends. I've worked in law for decades. I've seen liars. I've seen justice. And today, I know the difference. The gallery, once silent, now hung on every word. She wasn't just defending herself. She was calling out a system she believed had gone off course. Judge Reynolds called for final statements. Carter tried to frame Schiff's actions as protected. Speech, flawed perhaps, but rooted in civic duty. But it felt hollow. The courtroom wasn't convinced. Conway, with piercing clarity, closed with this. Ms. Pirro deserves more than an apology. The public deserves honesty. Senator Schiff must take responsibility. The judge nodded, taking it all in. We will reconvene tomorrow for the court's decision. As the session ended, Schiff left the courtroom alone, his steps unsteady. The bright lights of media cameras waited outside, but he walked past them, his head lowered. The video that had once felt like political brilliance now echoed like a confession. Jeanine Pirro stepped out moments later, composed, resolute, a symbol of triumph for her supporters. Inside the Democratic Party, conversations had already begun. Chuck Schumer held a somber meeting behind closed doors, voices lowered but firm. Adam may need to step down, one aide whispered. We can't risk collateral damage. Schiff, once their star, had become a cautionary tale, a high flyer, brought down not by opponents, but by his own unchecked ambition. Meanwhile, Pirro's profile soared. She gave a post-trial interview on Fox News, poised and powerful. I'm not here to score points, she told viewers. I'm here to protect the law. Trump reposted the clip within minutes, adding, Judge Jeanine is a fighter. Schiff, yeah, got caught in his own game. The comment went viral, hashtags flooding every corner of social media. By nightfall, Schiff sat in his apartment, curtains drawn, the glow of his phone flickering across his drawn face. Notifications poured in, some from supporters, but most from critics. His political future looked bleak. He replayed moments from earlier years, when he had felt invincible, fearless, right. Now doubt had settled like dust. His past strategy of weaponizing narrative had backfired, and this time the fallout was public and complete. Across town, Pirro reviewed new briefings, preparing for her role as acting federal prosecutor. She wasn't dwelling on the win. She was already moving forward, eyes set on reform, on cleaning house. In private, she allowed herself one moment of reflection. This trial had tested everything. Her patience, her record, her reputation. But she had stood firm. And in doing so, she had sent a message, not just to Schiff, but to all of Washington. The saga of Schiff versus Pirro wasn't just a legal drama. It was a glimpse into the high-stakes battlefield of modern politics, where words can destroy and evidence can redeem. The trial was over, but its echoes would linger. In headlines, in halls of power, and in the minds of every politician watching, wondering who would be next.